In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan Frye, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Nathan Lutz, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Bryan Frye, and joining me today are my good friends and co-host, Dustin Melbardis and Chad Robinson. Dustin, Chad, how are we doing today?
Quack, quack, I'm here. It's a beautiful, mild summer day here in sunny Texas. What's up, guys?
I couldn't help myself. I'm sorry.
Dustin Melbardis here to host. Quack, quack.
Just so you guys know, I messed up his name a couple podcasts ago, and now it's just going to be a running joke. Anytime I host, I'm gonna do it intentionally.
I hope to get Facebook comments. Why do you keep mispronouncing your host's name?
This guy, yeah.
You don't
and
get
my
the
good
show.
friend, guy whose name I don't know.
that is
Just
totally
what we
happened.
I'm going to start venturing out of the M's, and I'm just going to give you the most fun last name of an actor in the movie we're doing.
Yeah, Psych did it very well. This is Magic Head.
I'm excited. We're really entering in like a new meta of this show.
Oh, this is going to be epic.
We've had so many new hosts, though. I do feel like we have gotten the Ron Burgundy parts of, and my good friend Chad Robinson. Yes, I'm your friend now.
Who put a question mark on the teleprompter?
We're all just reading from Russell's notes.
Yeah, he does. You know, he could really destroy me. I want to tell you guys. I do have that problem. I will probably read whatever is on his thing. So if he ever just wanted to really nuke me, he could put something crazy on this.
Oh, it's too late now. I wrote it this time.
Chad, tell me, what's the last movie you saw, man?
Last movie I saw was The Old Ways, which was a Latin American exorcism movie. It's on Netflix right now, so I recommend checking that out. It's a different twist on the exorcist type genre.
Oh, it's a scary movie? You saw a scary movie?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I have seen other types of movies in between, but that was the last one. Gotta be honest. We're seeing the Paw Patrol movie tomorrow.
Oh, excellent. Dustin?
Well, no surprises there, no surprises here. I didn't see anything new. I rewatched Troy with with Brad Pitt and Eric Bana. I was in the mood for fights. I was in the mood. My roommate said something about the Ajax soap that we had. I'm like, you know what? They call it Ajax, right? Because it's tough on grease. And then I had to explain it, and I started feeling bad about the joke. But I love the movie, so I rewatched it.
That's phenomenal. I don't think I've ever even thought about it that way, but that's fantastic. For myself, last movie I watched was The Man with the Iron Fists. After I did my prep for this movie, I was just kind of jonesing for more of the same. Obviously, a bit of a different twist on the style of movie with that one, and but you know, being such a Wu-Tang fan, it's a must watch if you haven't seen it. So today, Dealer's Choice, Hero from 2002, starring Jet Li and Tony Leung. Its budget was $31 million. It grossed $177.4 million, and it placed 57th in the box office. The movie ahead of it was Saw, and behind it was Cheaper by the Dozen. How do we feel about its ranking in comparison to those two films, Chad?
Considering the genre, I think it did all right. I'm actually most surprised that Saw was just that far down. I feel like that's a movie, love it or hate it, people wound up seeing it.
It's true. I did see that one in the theaters, and
Same.
I mean, it was a fairly, I mean, obviously it's a shocking movie, but man, the twist at the end was. So I think I'm with Chad on this one. I am surprised that Saw is that deep. I think is the takeaway from this. How about you, Dustin?
I know how big of an impact it had as a Chinese movie, and like it was the most expensive movie they had ever made, and for a while, I don't know if it's still the same, but like it's the most it's the most money that a Chinese movie had ever made. And so just the difference in global box offices for being such a big deal over there, and then landing 57th on our box office, shows a pretty big difference. But yeah, I also saw in theaters and share the same surprise. I guess maybe it's because it spawned 1 to 200 sequels that I didn't know that it would be so far down the list.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a little off the rails on horror movies, so a little extra added. The number one movie the year this came out was Shrek 2, which beat out Spider-Man 2 and Passion of the Christ.
All three sequels?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much would you rather watch Hero than any of those three movies?
Spider-Man 2 certainly is actually a favorite of mine. I'm going to go with... I
might be on an island here.
I'm going to go scale of 1 to... It's hard for me to answer the question. I'm going to go with 7 because I'd rather watch Hero more than I'd rather watch Shrek 2 and The Passion of the Christ. But those remaining 3 points on the scale go to Spider-Man 2. Don't know if that's how that should have been answered. That's my answer.
That's fair. Basically, if you told me that I had to watch Shrek 2, Spider-Man 2, and Passion of the Christ end to end, or Hero 3 times in a row, I would watch Hero 3 times in a row.
Oh yeah.
I love all 3 of those movies, but it just blew my mind because we're just in the MCU world where MCU puts out a movie, that's the number 1 movie of the year. And to see something like Shrek 2 being number 1 and Passion of the Christ, love it, hate it, whatever. That was a phenomenon. I mean, churches were renting out theaters. That was huge. It until Deadpool, again, comic book movie, it was the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time, and it gets beaten by an ogre and a talking donkey, which I love the movie, so I will go to bat for Shrek too.
I'm trying to I don't want to go into why, because it's a long rant. But do you guys think that the MCU could now be like a marker in film the way we say BC and AD? Like, are there movies like BMCU or AMCU?
So we had the talkies in the golden age of movies. Yeah, I do think we're going to have to address this, starting with Iron Man, of like
Iron Man is the one, yeah.
The comic book age, where it was just existing franchises are all we're going to do, and we're going to make billions of dollars exploiting your childhood, and that's fine.
I mean, and the thing is, it's I feel like it's our childhood that's being exploited. Fully grown adults are their bread and butter, because we were like, where was this when we were kids?
Yeah.
Well, it was wasted on Tobey Maguire, and we're like, yeah, we don't want that. We want this.
Curveball from me. I was super heavy into seeing all of these. You brought up the idea of a new Saw every year, or a new Fast and the Furious every year. But I have actually fallen off the cliff. I don't see every new Marvel movie anymore, and I certainly don't see DC movies anymore. I think it was right around Ant-Man that I stopped seeing every comic book movie, and I don't. Aside from the huge ones like Infinity War and Infinity Crisis, I don't even know what they're called anymore. There's a bunch
Endgame
that I miss. Endgame, thank you. Yeah, and those are see once and don't see. I don't watch these WandaVisions, or I really like Falcon and Winter Soldier as characters. Skipped the whole series. There's an inundation. There's too much of it for me. So I think I would say that while money wise you're talking about if there's a BMCU and an AMCU, I mean, clearly we know what the people have responded to, but for me, they've lost me.
All right, we have hit comic book saturation.
Honey, get the torches and the pitchforks. We're gonna go burn down Dustin Michelson's house.
It's gonna be a long walk.
I don't think you're alone. I mean, yeah, we're coming out with a Black Widow movie that no one was excited for. I saw it. It was okay. It murdered my boy Taskmaster. Shang-Chi, it's getting good ratings. We'll see if it holds up. It'll be interesting to see what happens if people really are just getting tired of it.
I gotta say no. I mean, I spent $30 buying Black Widow at home, so I didn't have to go to a theater to watch it. And I tell you what, is it a top tier Marvel movie? No. Was it worth me, spending $30 on it? Absolutely. That's a ticket I didn't buy for my wife and I. And look, I'm not trying to like starve theaters or anything, but when you got a 1-year-old, you don't get theater time anymore. So
Thank
the
you.
fact that was available to me was wonderful. So anyway, hats off to Disney Plus for a solid shot for those who can't make it to the theaters as much anymore. And look, as long as they keep making them with the quality that we expect from a Marvel movie, and I'm not saying it's going to win an Oscar. Clearly, they've made it, abundantly obvious that they're never going to give MCU movies any respect in the Oscars. But I mean, it was witty, it had action, it was compelling. The falling from the air thing was a little ridiculous, but it's a comic book movie. Like, chill out. It's just what you signed up for.
Well, hey, with
So,
Shang-Chi, we've got Tony Leung in there,
Yep.
who made his way into 2002/2004's Hero.
right,
Dustin's trying over there.
The movie we're here to talk about.
yeah. So completely off the rails. That's my fault.
Yes.
IMDb rating for Hero, 2002's Hero, just in case all of you people have forgotten on these tangents, 7.9 IMDb rating. So hats off to that. I'm happy it's keeping it real. Rotten Tomatoes, critics gave it 94, audience 87. So critics are even bigger applause. It was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film for both Golden Globes and Academy Awards, so it's getting some nods. I always appreciate seeing that on our films, especially the ones we actually like. What were your expectations? I'm going to start with Chad on this one, just because I know he hasn't seen it, and I can sneak that one in.
Yeah.
Chad, what were your expectations with this movie?
I'm pretty familiar with Jet Li. I hadn't seen anything that he'd particularly done for China or part of their film industry, and I've seen some wuxia films, so I had a decent idea of what I was getting into. It was more the time period, and when this started, it was talking about China being divided into 3 parts, and I was like, oh cool, is this a Romance of the Three Kingdoms story? Am I going to get some Lubu? Am I going to get some of that? And it was just a completely different time period. This is the first unification of China. So all of that was a bit unexpected. And I still remember I wanted to see this movie and for whatever reason just didn't get to it. But I can still remember the trailer and being blown away of how beautiful it was. And man, there were things that weren't in the trailer or weren't in my memory bank. And it's just a gorgeous movie through and through.
I couldn't possibly agree with you more on that. Dustin, as this is your pick, give us a little idea of your background with it, your expectations, and how you feel about it.
That's right. This was my dealer's choice, and I was happy to select this. I'm actually coming off of an episode came out last month, listeners, Enter the Dragon. So I've been in a kung fu. I actually thought it was wushu, but you said wuxia. So I've been in this kind of mode for a little bit, and so I was glad to bring this back. I've seen this half a dozen times. I saw it in theaters when I was in high school. A big deal visual movie, and so coming back to it, I know that I needed to pay attention more because I think perhaps the thing that can't be explained in a trailer or can't be shown to you is the method of the storytelling, which is this is a storytelling movie. The scenes you see are all being told by a narrator on screen. I think we have 4 different narrators in this movie. So there's when these things are flashbacks or things that have already happened, then they get brought back up into like there's a lot of things to pay attention to. And so coming into this, and I'll tell you, gang, I'm not 100% still. There's still some things I don't know all the things that exactly happen in order. But that's what I knew that I needed to pay attention to was which stories were tall tales and which stories were the accurate truth of what happened. But the 3 out of 3 here is that this is maybe one of the prettiest movies I've ever seen, and I think the way that you would compete with a movie of this beauty is nowadays going to be completely rendered in green screen. So the on location stuff here, I mean, I think the only thing I could potentially think of that was as pretty as this movie are the Lord of the Rings movies, the New Zealand landscapes. Just incredible. I don't know if you can compare to that, then you're doing something right.
Yeah.
So I had seen this movie before. It's I kind of go through phases where I want to watch stuff like this, and then I kind of put it away for a little while. So I was actually pretty stoked that you picked this, just as a good reason to come back to it. As Chad said, I find these movies absolutely fascinating. It's not only the historical part, but there's nothing really like this anywhere else in the world. It's very uniquely Chinese. And what just a gorgeous country. Like, my wife came in and sat down about halfway through my second rewatch of this, and she was like, I have no idea what's going on, but it's really pretty. And I'm like, yeah, it is. I was like, these movies are so visually striking. And I say these movies, this style of movie has always been very visually striking. And we'll get into a little bit more with the elements, but this is just a fun watch. If you are a fan of cinematography and landscape and location, this is something you got to watch. When was the first time you saw it, Dustin?
I know that we said 2002. That was the Chinese release. I think '04 was when it hit theaters. It would have been high school for me either way. But yeah, I would have gone to real theaters in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, to see this movie. But yeah, I will say it may have been one of those ones that I went alone or just with one other martial arts appreciating friend, because it would have been hard for me to convince a lot of people to see a subtitled movie.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, nothing against my East Tennessee bros, but that might have been a little bit too much for them to pay attention to. But yeah, it was right when it released in the States. So junior year, senior year, something like that.
Very good.
The only reason that I am compelled to say I didn't see it until it came out in DVD is because most of my artsy movies I saw with Chad, co-host Chad on this podcast right now, at the Warner Theater in Morgantown, West Virginia at this point in time. We saw a variety of artsier movies there, to varying acceptance levels. And since he hasn't seen it, I'm assuming we didn't see this in theaters. Like
No.
you said, it's a hard sell a lot of times to get people to go see subtitled films. And I've gone through phases where I'm like, I'm not into reading anything right now in terms of film. And so I don't think I saw this one in theaters. I know I saw Crouching Tiger in theaters.
Yep.
And it's probably 50-50 on House of Flying Daggers, but it is a movie that I remember. I mean, I have it, so I know I at least saw it on DVD at some point earlier because I own it. But yeah, I don't think I saw this one in theaters.
Well, I was glad to revisit it for today's show and get the chance. I didn't know for sure I was introducing it to Chad. But I'm glad that he got to see it, and then we'll get into it. But yeah, kind of a cool thing to be able to share something so striking like this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude, Chad's getting like an onslaught right now. Like, I hit him with 12 Angry Men, you're hitting him with Hero. I mean, it's like a thing right now.
I was
Andres
so sad
came through and with the Born on the 4th of July.
Yeah. I was so sad to be left out of 12 Angry Men. Like, I was scheduled for that show. Please listen to it anyways. Or you may be enticed. You're like, oh, Chad's not on that. But yeah, Russell had to fill in. That was a great movie. Go see that movie.
I was so ecstatic that you hadn't seen it. Like,
I was upset.
That was one of those things. It's like a diamond. Like, it's just one of those things where I'm like, you mean I get to be the one?
Yeah.
Like, that's now. To be fair, this was actually this was a Ryan Haupt pick. So our guest host for that episode gave us a short list. This was on it, and I insisted. So I was the Chris Paul here. I only assisted this movie happening, but no, I can't get over the fact that I got the honor of pushing that forward for you.
I was mad too. I was texting Russell. I was like, this is the one movie I didn't want him to pick. It was an awesome short list full of things I love. I was like, Frye, don't pick this. Everything else is cool. And Frye was like charging in 12 Angry Men, and I was upset.
It was fairly meme worthy. I was like, we're doing 12 Angry Men, right? No, I mean we're doing 12 Angry Men, right? All right, off the rails again. But anyway, listen to 12 Angry Men. We will be back in just a minute after this advertising break. There will be spoilers. So plot summary ahead. If you have not watched this yet, if we haven't spoiled it a little bit already, telling you how beautiful it was, then it is. And here is our advertisements. Enjoy.
What happens when two modern film fans go back and rewatch all the old classic films from yesteryear to see if they hold up? You get the Classic Film Jerks podcast. Find the Classic Film Jerks podcast on all the major platforms.
Welcome to the Flashback Flicks Retro Movie Podcast. I'm Ricky.
I'm Grayson.
And every week we review a movie from the past and reflect on things we missed, things we loved, and things we want to see again.
Yeah, because we believe any movie worth watching is worth watching again.
So if you like films, friendship, and a lot of callbacks,
I mean, just so many callbacks,
then subscribe on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever RSS feeds go for like-minded movie-loving individuals. Like you.
All right, we are back, and now for your plot summary. Now, again, spoilers lie ahead, so if you are planning on watching this movie, and I highly recommend you do, watch it before you listen to this part right now.
Chinese Propaganda, the movie. During the Warring States period of ancient China, Nameless meets with the King of the Qin, who has survived numerous assassination attempts. Oh, alliteration. Shouldn't have done that. That should probably indicate this isn't a good dude, but I digress. So Nameless claims to have killed 3 would-be assassins and displays their weapons to the king and recounts how he accomplished such a feat. The king calls shenanigans at the end of Nameless's fantastic tale, and then spins a different story of how he thinks things might have actually gone down. Nameless does concede a few points, but then proceeds to tell the true story of his victory, including that he didn't really kill the assassins after all due to a perfect technique. The king is touched by the story and realizes Nameless is there to kill him, so he naturally hands over his sword to an assassin. Then turns his back and reads beautiful calligraphy from a scroll and describes the ideal warrior as someone who has no desire to kill. Bold move. Although the Qin had killed his family, Nameless reconsiders the assassination and decides to walk away, realizing the king is the only one strong enough to unite China and make it our land. The king promptly has Nameless executed because, well, you can't exactly let assassins traipse about the countryside unpunished, and 2 of Nameless's accomplices die fighting each other. Nameless receives a hero's funeral, and we learn that the Qin king becomes Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. All hail the glories of the CCP.
Very good. Excellent. I
really shouldn't have put the word accomplice in my plot summary so many times when I cannot say it.
You said it just now.
I know.
The pressure's off. You can say it now.
Yeah.
So my first thought was Hot Shots Part 2, where it's like when he tried to kill a guy.
Yes.
Anywho.
we're just determined to not talk about this movie.
Yeah. You will hear a lot of detractants on this. Those do not exist. Dustin, as you are the one that brought this movie up, I will allow you first dibs on our plot discussion. So give me your lowdown on how this movie is awesome and why you love it.
Sure. Well, and I do love it, and I think it's awesome. This movie is above all else beautiful, as we mentioned before the break, and we see it in the form of, as was said in the plot description, some stories being told between Nameless, played by Jet Li, and the King of Qin, one of the states of pre-unified China. And the story, I think there's two stories going on here. There's the plot to kill the king, and then there's also a tangled web of love and deception and what ideals are highest between two of the assassin accomplices. That's how you say it. And
Show off.
That is a really compelling part of this movie. Is martial arts is fascinating to watch, and when you can fill the spots in between the fighting and the dancing and the flying and the music and the colors, then if you can fill that spot with some story elements that are very cool, that are well acted, that have emotion in them, I think that there were times when I was younger when I would fast forward through the beautiful scenes and just get to the fighting. But rewatching it this time, the movie's awesome because the rest of the movie together, whether it's the changes in directions, the zigs and the zags of how the stories are, we know that the stories are being told, and one of them is intentionally a lie. One of them is the king's supposition of what's happening, of what's actually happening. Then they counter back and forth. One says, you've underestimated me. No, you've actually underestimated somebody else. Here's how these slight changes affect the retelling of the final story. I don't know how, I didn't plan on that being succinct, but the storytelling from this frame tale is really cool, especially since it's filled with all types of sword play and just incredible visuals.
Agreed.
I told Russell when I got into this, I was expecting an action movie, and I was expecting something. There's been a lot of literature, video games, even movies about Romance of the Three Kingdoms. So when they're starting with the Three Kingdoms, I'm like, all right, this is what I'm getting. We're going to get the true warring states. What I didn't expect was story time. And I think that lent a little bit to this genre. And I did have to look it up because I was in Dustin's camp of, isn't it wushu? But according to Bing, Google, everything else, it's wuxia.
Wuxia.
You know, that enabled a lot of the wuxia elements, the elevation and the slow movement and the impossible feats that they're doing. And it kind of comes closer to reality towards the end. But I feel like the story narrative really aided and allowed for the suspension of disbelief. Sure, yeah, they're flying around, they're dancing on the water, they're splitting arrows in half. Just all of that cool stuff could only really be done in a, I'm telling you a tall tale. And I'll give you this. I want more movies where people just give wild narratives. You know, can we get a Western movie about a bunch of cowboys sitting around a campfire talking about, well, yeah, I took down this entire saloon with one revolver or something like that, one bullet. I don't know. I just want more of this style of movie in other genres.
I actually think there's a lot of tie-in. I don't have like a whole bunch of stuff like on my hip to spit out here, but I do think that there is a fair amount of tie-in, Unforgiven being one of them, where they borrow a lot from Eastern culture, movie, and storytelling for Western film.
Okay.
As in what you're seeing, isn't realistic. I believe on our Silverado episode, we talked a little bit about the one guy shooting a Molotov cocktail out of the sky with a shotgun. And the idea of things being incredible is kind of why you go to the movies. To see somebody do the normal, most logical thing doesn't make good movie making or storytelling always. But yeah, Chad, I think you really hit it, which is storytelling allows for the you said like splitting through an arrow, catching an arrow out of the sky. We have an example of somebody piercing through the haft of a paintbrush and splitting all of the little hairs into like a poof of disintegration. Like that's through
how swift your sword is
and accurate. Yeah. It's without being some type of supernatural magic. I think what we are getting is what would you guys describe it as? The things that protect the. Let's take an example like Broken Sword and Snow storming the castle of 3,000 guards. There's no reason that two people should be able to get through that many people. In some movies, it's magic. In some movies, it's divine favor. I think in movies like this, you would call it some type of swordsman's aura.
They've got
Do you guys
chi.
have a name for this?
Yeah,
Chi?
it's their chi.
Guys, I spent years playing Dynasty Warriors. I do this on the reg.
Yes, again, you get Lu Bu in charge. It's like, do not engage with Lu Bu. It's like, I'm going to ignore that game. Oh, you were serious.
Leroy.
Yes.
Oh no, I think he just ran in. Save him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, look, I think that as you go through this movie and you see the pieces of fact and fallacy as they are laid out by the various narrators and the way that they lay them out, distinguish themselves in their attire.
Yeah.
Whose story is equivalent to what they're wearing. You can, to the Emperor's perspective, it could be, it was like they fought through thousands of guards.
Yes. That's a great way of putting it, man.
It wasn't necessarily that it happened that way. It felt like it happened that way because they got to me.
Yeah.
So when you do storytelling, and humans are prone to exaggeration, it makes a more compelling story if they are literally slapping guys aside with their shirt sleeves. Like, I hit you in the face with a drop of water and you went, ah! Like, it's a more compelling storytelling aspect to have it done that way because it gives credence to the gravity of the situation. And it allows you to make a picture that is otherwise mundane have gravitas.
That's a really great point. We've said at least one or two of us have said water dancing. The scene where Broken Sword and Nameless are fighting over the lake is the king's approximation of what the lie has to be. Yeah. He wasn't there. He's telling Nameless what he thinks happened, and so instead of a fanciful tale of a lie where they pretend to fight and one guy just says, "Okay, you got me. You take my sword to the king." We have maybe one of the most incredible locations that they shot at, that lake. Do you guys know where that lake was? Somebody does. Is that where that shot is in Mongolia or near Kazakhstan? I don't remember where that one was.
They did shoot in Mongolia, but as far as geographic China, I'm out.
Yeah, not so good with that one either.
Sorry, let me chime in right here because it is something that kind of messed with me a little bit, and this just it's a good segue. And this actually is my change one thing. I felt like they took too many liberties on beautiful scenery of China to maintain the illusion that this all happened within a designated area.
So you're saying too many seasons, too much snow, fall.
Well, I mean, you obviously have like high desert China, you have the Pinnacle Islands, you've got, outward toward Mongolia. I understand he's traveling, but there are only a couple people that we're dealing with, and two of them are in the same place.
That's
So
true.
it
Yeah.
it just I felt like they were really capitalizing on the beauty of the country, which no fault there. But I do feel like if I did 2 days of research, I would find that Sky and Broken Sword were waiting for word on whether he succeeded 300 miles from where the scroll was made, which was,
Yeah.
2,000 miles away from where he fought Scott. Like, it just, how they brought up the kingdoms in that map in the very beginning, I just feel like they were all over the place for the country. And I could be wrong. Like I said, I'd have to do research on this. But it felt like the plethora of beautiful China that they put into this movie happens spread across an entire country when maybe what they're really getting at is more localized.
That makes sense to me. I know that you are up in the Pacific Northwest, and I know that I traveled from Walla Walla, Washington, down through an incredible mountain pass where I was wearing flip-flops and a t-shirt with snow on the ground, and it was 55 degrees out. And then I traveled about 2 hours northeast to Hell's Canyon in Idaho, and where it was 110 degrees in Rocky Desert with some awesome Pueblo style towns with the big rock formations up top. So this isn't meant to say that I think what you're saying is valid. Like this is almost a continent's worth of different places, and the main story happens between two of these provinces of the original 7 that they show on the map, which is Qin and Zhao. And I think that's kind of, we are looking at a small space, not that whole map. We're looking at a small space that things happen. But I think my main response to that would be that this is probably where what mattered was the colors and the shots, as opposed to the believability of how close they were in proximity to one another. To where like the vision, like the director's vision, probably took precedence over the how well do you believe this could
100%.
have happened. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm 100%. I just, as an addendum to this, it's just one of those things that took me out of it a little bit. Like, as I'm watching, I'm like getting a little whiplash on locales.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get beautiful lagoon fight after you just quote unquote killed wife, lover in the desert. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
it was very shifty to where I'm like, okay, well, how
Those horses ain't that fast.
Yeah. So it's not a gripe. I want more beautiful locale. I want to see more of this country. I want it to be a showcase. Like, this should be a travel like benefit. Like, you should show this movie on flights to China and be like, look how awesome this is. You should go to all these places. So I get it in terms of really showcasing the variety that you can get from China. But at the same time, like, when you have such close proximity pieces, then to have such a drastic change and like you said, Pacific Northwest is a great example. We've got I have a rainforest 3 hours away.
It's like every biome is within half a day.
So I get it. I get that piece, and that could be true, and that's a research piece. But it is something that took me out of the movie a little bit, I guess is my point.
I mean, that happens for people. I imagine it happens all the time to people that live in Georgia, where a bunch of things are filmed. I keep going to back to Batman, which was filmed in Pittsburgh. They're taking roads, and I'm sitting there watching the movie with a bunch of Yinzers. You go, you can't go that way. People are shouting in the theater. Like, you'd wind up in a completely different part of town. So yeah, you're probably doing the job of a Chinese film critic that isn't allowed to write what you just said in his country. Of like, hey, you can't do this. This show's already banned in China. I don't care.
This particular episode, not the whole show. They can listen to other ones. Just we're not gonna put this on the Chinese feed.
Yeah, they started it until my plot summary, and now it's gone.
So I will say, as far as taking you out of it, there's there's 4, 5 principal actors in this movie, right?
Yeah, right.
Say 5. 5 is a good
5, right? So we have the 3 assassins. Well, okay, we've got King, Nameless, 3 assassins, and then Moon, who is Broken Sword's
6.
apprentice. So let's say 6, and they take up 98% of the movie. So when we have a vast like array of places that they are, and there's only this many people doing anything. And combined with the storytelling method, which is primarily in flashback, I agree with you. That's where I kind of get taken out of it, because part of what's getting in the way of my enjoyment of the movie is like keeping track of what's real, what's the lie, or what's the story, what's the approximation, who was actually killed, who actually did what. If my favorite scene is actually not the truth of what happened, was it still my favorite scene because it did not happen? I would say, combined with the storytelling method, the vast like distance between where some of these places are, and just the few amount of people, I'm actually surprised at how just having so few people can pull off a story like this.
I think that's a really, I mean, it's a good point. But I would also say that part of the fun of this movie, fun is a poor dictionary word for what I'm really trying to get at, but the variations in memory or telling of how this story unfolds is the bread and butter of the story. Like,
yeah,
if I could cut off 3 characters, I would do Moon, the Emperor, and Sky. Because
Sky, yeah, the spear user.
The core of this movie is about a couple and Nameless, and his insistence that he can accomplish something that only half of the couple once accomplished. And that's the real story. And I'll tell you why. When I was rewatching this, I still remembered what happened. But I was like, when I hit the point where the Emperor calls him out and says, "You've underestimated me," there's still a full hour left in this movie.
Yeah.
So you've already had him feasibly kill Sky. You've already had him tell his tale of defeating the lovers. And the Emperor calls him out of it. So the deception piece doesn't start until then. So you have almost, I want to say, 2/3 of the movie still to go. And it is about this couple that he has to not only convince, but they also have to get around themselves in order to do. And I feel like that in itself feeds into the idea that, like, there's really only 3 people that are important in this movie. And if I absolutely had to, I'd whittle it down to 2, and it's not Nameless.
Oh man, this
Interesting.
I think the director would disagree with you. I mean, this is a nationalist movie. It definitely has undertones. It has collectivism. It has sacrificing what you want for the good of, at the end, it even says, one China. So it's submission to an emperor, putting down your rebellion, putting down what you want for this one China, one our land type thing. So to me, the Emperor and Nameless could have done this without everybody else. I mean, yeah, he needs that conversation with Broken Sword, but those two are pretty much the ones to me. I guess I would go the opposite direction. You could cut out the love triangle. For me, that's I don't need it.
Well, one, the love triangle was fake.
Yeah.
And two, I would say that the love piece of this is the act of rebellion. It is the piece that the state would overlook, saying, oh, look, this is the message we're sending. But they planted the seed of dissidence in the story with these two.
I'm shifting gears. My brain is shifting gears right now over the last minute. I'm getting there.
This is like the piece that I took away as the most important piece was the fact that you do have differing opinions within the core. And even though it ended up being, the Emperor lives, the person pro-Emperor lives still dies. And the one who was pro-Emperor dies, kills herself on the altar of love because she didn't realize what the cost was for the greater benefit. So I get what you're saying about state peace, but I think that the hidden piece of this movie was really about the two of them.
I don't know. I don't think it's hidden. It's definitely not what you get in the trailer, or I think somebody would say, what kind of movie is this? Is this a love story? Is this a martial arts movie, wuxia? What are you getting out of it? And I would say, and I've said it before on this podcast, that I think romantic love usually butts its way into far too many movies, but this particular story told in this framing is welcome to me while watching, and I with this rewatch, even though I've seen the movie several times, I did pay more attention to the motives here. In the end, there's of the actors here, we once Donnie Yen leaves the screen, he doesn't come back. Sky did his part and is in there for a fight, and essentially he's kind of done. His job's done. We actually learned that the truth is that he was stabbed with the super special technique that does not kill, and he's recovering well. So at credits, Sky's doing just fine. We know that the lovers, Broken Sword and Snow, both do perish, but it is only Snow at that point who is driven towards the Emperor must die, and we only get a couple minutes. This is in Broken Sword's flashback story, which is told in a different color. I believe his color is green. He's retelling it in green of when they first met, how he was a wanderer and she was the daughter of a famous general of whom she inherited the sword of. So she was a daughter of Xiao, the other province or state. So she's driven towards I am a citizen of Zhao, and this is what I must have. And so she's never ever convinced that the right thing to do is to spare the Emperor. It's only Broken Sword's vision that then translates over to Nameless's vision or ideal that this is the only way that things can go. And I do think that as far as what the king's role here is, I think they went a little too heavy with the only an assassin can understand what I really want. That what I really want is peace, and I think that's where to get back to the Chinese propaganda aspect of this that you had brought up in the plot discussion, like. Oh wait, so the leader was right the whole time, and he's the only one that can do this, and we all and the best thing to do is to all surround him with love and support. Not only that came on a little thick late But these are things I only paid attention to this time because I am usually a little too distracted by, whoa, super awesome flying fighting.
I mean, we made the comparison, at least scenery-wise, of Lord of the Rings, but this movie itself, it's like the wuxia Lord of the Rings, except Frodo decides that the ring should actually be given to Sauron during the climax scene. And it's so beautiful that absolutely no one questions this decision.
I think that at that point in time in history, the ebb and flow of power happens as easily as the ocean does it. So I'm not trying to belittle the fact that, decisions were made one way or the other. I guess I am more enthralled by this movie based on the flying snow broken sword piece than I am with the political aspirations of its making.
Yeah, for me, unfortunately, I can't divorce them. And it was one of the things that, we come to the end, and this guy does become the first emperor of China. He founds the Qin dynasty. It's extremely influential in Chinese history. He also establishes the first police state. And so at the end, it's just leaving this really, really tough taste in my mouth of like, this dude purged scholars. They wrote poetry called The 10 Crimes of Qin. 400,000 people died building a wall for him. Just like, all right, we're celebrating this dude, and it's tough for me. I come from a historian background. This was actually one of the things I studied in college. Great teacher, but yeah, it's when I figured it wasn't going to be Romance of the Three Kingdoms and complete Chinese fable, I'm like, oh no, this is the wrong period. Oh no, I know who this guy is.
About 5 minutes ago now, I was going to ask, like, does the purpose of this movie's creation stand in the way of your enjoyment of it?
I think it does.
That was going to be a question, but the answer, it's not a question anymore. It's just fact is that of the things that if you could isolate what was the reality of what happened, especially talking to somebody that is as steeped and knowledgeable of history like yourself, I can see how it does get in the way of what if the subject material was not true, then this could be appreciated without having to look through the lens that you must look through. That makes sense. That makes more sense now.
Yeah, to me, it's like if Russia made a movie about the assassination of a guy named Yosef Yugashvili. He later becomes Joseph Stalin, changes his name. You can't. It's tough glorifying the creation of the world's first police state. So yeah, I mean, not to drag down some of the other things and get into these very serious topics, but for me, with the background that I come into and the knowledge of this period, it's like, man, we're ending this, and I kind of had just wished, the eye bulge and you get that fake out, and we all know it's like he didn't kill the emperor, but they gave us that little tease of maybe he did. He didn't kill the king. Like, this ends.
They're not going to Inglorious Bastards it and change what actually happened.
Yeah, Inglorious Bastards is a good comparison.
So toward the end of this movie, when they actually do fire on Nameless, like I said, my wife came in at the bottom half of this. She was like, "That's a bit overkill, right?"
No.
No. Then it hits, and I look at her and I say, "All right, now kill everyone who missed."
Yeah. Well,
right.
It reminds me of The Last Jedi, where he's just screaming more, and he's blasting Luke with the AT-AT, just screaming more. Yeah, that's the equivalent.
Hey, at least that was precise. I mean, this is ridiculous. Like, if you're shooting an entire city, I understand the blanket coverage principle, but dude, the guy is standing right there. I was like, dude, you just did like, all right, here's a block, and we fired arrows, and then they landed as a block, and I understand it from a cinematography aspect, is like, here's where his body was, and it's.
Do you remember in
But
the
I mean,
movie? Yeah, I'm with you. I actually thought about that for the discussion of today's podcast of like, well, they're probably trained to fire on cities. They're never trained to adjust their angle to fire on one person. So it probably went off exactly as it should have. But the thing the thousands of arrows that are there made me think of kind of I don't think there's very little comedy in this movie, very little. But maybe the only part that I thought was comedic was Nameless and Snow are complementing each other's fighting styles after they use their chi to defend arrows from destroying the calligraphy school occupants completely. If you look in the background while they're talking on the roof, the city looks like a bunch of sea urchins, like with all of the arrows just all over everything. That's something that like it just, the sheer volume of what this war force is for the Qin dynasty. I mean, it's in the movie a lot, considering that it's almost always, we're almost always dealing with one-on-one battles. I actually found it, as I said, the last movie I watched was Troy, with a lot of giant battles. It's great for me to see some one-on-one kung fu.
See, I'm okay with the, we'll call it overkill, but I don't think it was enough with arrows. We don't know what this dude's power is. He's possibly killed several assassins. He can fly, he can jump. Who knows? Maybe he can teleport. Blanket whatever you can. Make sure.
Okay, that's fair. No, that's fine. I mean, maybe he could like just, jump over the wall or something. I get it. Okay, I get from that standpoint. But I feel like if you recuse yourself from killing an emperor, which I feel like everyone at Witness saw, do a slow walk outside as everybody's like, oh, snap. They gave him a big, wide berth all the way to the gate.
Yeah.
Like, that's a tap out. Like, this dude could have messed you up. He could have messed him up. Like, we already saw the proposed what two of these people could do to guards. Granted, we're talking about point of views here, but I just thought it was a little silly. It would have been more honorable for the emperor in this scenario to not riddle this guy with arrows, to simply take a House Stark aspect to it and say, I will be the one who kills you.
Yeah.
Honorably. Not by death by 1,000 arrows. Really? Like, that's what you got for this guy who just spared your life in hopes that you unify the country?
In the back, might I say. The actual king had a ton of assassination attempts on him, and they were hilariously inept. Like, one guy forgot his knife, and none of the palace guards were allowed swords. Like, I really hate when I go to my assassination and forget my knife. But
Same.
There were like 3 just the most inept assassination attempts. So this one, at least, he posed a threat. But yeah, I could see that if you get your head chopped off instead of shot in the back with 1,000 arrows.
Or whatever. I mean, it just seemed very ineloquent for a completely eloquent end. Like, he set it up to be honorable.
Yeah.
I think what we might have a little bit of like a symptom of there was a period where any movie with archers is going to do that, like blot out the sky archery scene.
Our arrows will black out the sun.
You had to say it. You're fighting the shade.
Yes.
Like that really dominated war scenes, and probably still will forever. Is, hey, we can make this look like that, and every scene has it. I mean, Troy had it. The 300 movies had it. Like a whole bunch of movies do this now. It almost felt like somebody should have said to Zhang Yimou, could we do like a executioner's axe or something. Like, no, more arrows.
More arrows.
We spent all this money on arrows. We got to use them.
Well, the funny thing was, I kept going back to English movies while I was watching this, where they didn't want to fire volleys because of how expensive arrows were.
Oh, wow.
And this is literally hundreds of years later. So I'm just sitting there thinking, like, there must be just infinite arrows. Like, that just must not even be a thing for them.
Hear that, or it's like the Chris Rock sketch of his gun control. Make bullets really expensive, so when a guy gets shot 6 times,
Man, he must have really deserved it.
yeah, that's like $10,000. That guy deserved it. Yeah, I did see Jackie Chan was offered the role of the king. He turned it down. I don't know about you guys, but I'm actually pretty glad that happened.
Yeah, good on him.
That would have been super distracting for me.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and you're spot on. That would have been crazy distracting.
I actually think that that's the reason he turned it down was he didn't want it to be a side piece, and I like the casting of this movie overall, but I will say that the Emperor was my least favorite.
Well, they tried it was for Sky, Robin Xiao, the guy that played Liu Kang in Mortal Kombat. Love that dude. He was the first choice. He dropped out. I go back and forth on that one. Sky wasn't a huge part of the movie. I do like Donnie Yen, but Robin Xiao was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's because there's so few people that are on screen, so few actors on screen. We actually have a very limited amount of acting. We have people doing the roles of the plot, but I would say the most on-screen acting would be between the couple, would be between Broken Sword and Snow, and so Donnie Yen doesn't do anything but be stoic. I think he maybe says some words, but he's stoic. And it's a cool scene. I mean, we haven't talked about the fighting scenes like in microcosms, and that's the thing that drew me to this movie. But that's okay. The thing about like the Emperor, the thing that had him elevate a little bit to me is during one of the green flashbacks in the dark palace with the green drapes, another just absolutely stunning visual scene where you see him fight against Broken Sword one-on-one. That kind of elevated his character a little bit to me. Is that I think a lot of times your emperor surrounded by guards, I think like by design or by nature they get some training, but they're not necessarily the strongest warrior. I mean, this guy went toe to toe with Broken Sword in the retelling. But another thing that we have to have a little bit of suspension of disbelief here, but he went toe to toe with Broken Sword in this, and I think that is the actor doing what he's doing there. Chen Daoming as the King of Qin. Like, that's awesome to me that he was there. And I think always having him in that one place, because he doesn't really move that much in the movie either. He kind of sits on that one in front of those 70 candles. Another just kind of cool visual. If you had to ask me for just a really quick description of why I said, hey, we should watch this movie, I'm like, it just looks great. And it might be the prettiest movie I've ever seen. Even some of these short scenes with, when there's only 6 people that you're ever really looking at, one of them, one of the principal actors got to be your least favorite.
Those candles were very unhelpful, or at least timing wise. He's like, I have 100 candles and they have told me you're an assassin. It's like, I would tell you he's an assassin prior to dismissing the guards, but the 10 feet rule. He is social distancing in ancient China, so good for him.
Yes, 10 paces.
Yes. Yes. And it's very convenient. It's like your technique, 10 paces. Yeah,
first 100, then 50, then 20, then 10, or something like that. Do you think that that when the king calls out Nameless for the story, Do you think that you had audience members that were looking for what's actually going on here, and like the moment that they see him approach further than 100 or closer to 100 feet, you have people saying like, "Oh, he's an assassin," and then 30 minutes into the movie, for the movie maker to say, "I'm going to have a character kind of pounce on what you think is the right theory and say, yeah, hey, you're an assassin. I know what's going on here. Let's retell the story a little bit." What did you guys think about that as being like a tool for moving the story forward? Is like, if you're trying to get ahead of this, oh, don't worry, we've got several more zags to go.
I think it's the hope. Like, the hope is that people were buying into what was going on, and that was going to be the end result. And then what you have to do is go with a really hard sidetrack. Like, that's what happened about, I want to say 46 minutes in, was that hard sidetrack. Like, he's close enough. He's calling you out, the fact that you are an assassin. He's already accomplished his goal. He's close enough. That's already been done. So what actually happens in the rest of this movie? Like, what is the generational piece that you're going to get from the rest of it? And that's actually what makes the movie. Like, most of what build up comes to that piece, because you get two switches. You get the initial switch, which is, I've already seen through you. I'm a very smart ruler. Then you get you are a very smart ruler, and you're right about some of it, but here's where you're wrong. And I don't feel like you get that from a lot of films, where you can literally get the aha, but aha ha ha.
And yeah, they counter each other's counter. I think it goes back and forth like 4 times.
Almost like a sword fight.
Whoa. Oh man, my head just exploded. Yeah, it's I don't think I gave it that much credit when I was younger, but I give it more credit now, for that, for kind of keeping audience member like, what is actually real here, and caring about the. I mean, 4 of the 6 main characters are assassins.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is not an anti-hero movie. You're not rooting for the Punisher here. You're just okay. This is the world that we've been set up as, and then you've got, I guess, two characters who are slightly more minor. Zhang Ziyi as Moon, who just kind of is an emotional character, fun to see in a movie where there's a whole lot of. Oh, and this was brought up a little earlier that I didn't say anything else about. A whole lot of slow motion in this movie.
Yeah.
I believe I read something online where if you took away the slow motion, this is a 40-minute movie. which I think is true. There's so much slow motion in this movie. And it's not bullet time slow motion. There's a lot of stuff that's just slow. And then there's also things that are like the two combatants need to reposition themselves. And as they're doing it, the scene is like superimposed with their face and the color of the scene in their eyes, and like it's very artistic, but it's still pretty slow, like moving as this goes on. But I just with these with Zhang Ziyi with Moon here, she finds herself as like a little like side part of a story from like everybody's perspective, and all she's doing is getting hurt. The people around her are just losing their lives. She's not factoring into the end plot much.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So we've really gotten deep into the plot here, but let's talk a little bit about the atmosphere. The soundtrack does tend to lead to what happens in the movie. It's interlaced. Chad, how do you feel about how they work music into this?
Oh, you set me up for failure right off the bat. I absolutely hated this soundtrack. I felt like it made the movie seem much, much longer, and it dragged the entire film down. They use some unique instruments to set up the pieces. I am culturally ignorant, and it was lost on me. So I'm like, please stop slow playing the drums. Just please stop. I don't need another violin solo. This was not Howard Shore Lord of the Rings epic. I wanted legendary.
You're right. With violin, all they got was Yitzhak Perlman. That's the only violinist they got. Just maybe one of the most recognized violinists.
I so missed the mark on this. I thought you had like something like really like profound to say. I'm not.
I knew that's what he was going to say.
No, I feel bad because I was like, oh, okay, he's got some shit.
Yeah,
like, he's got to say, let's do this.
It's fine. It's fine being set up for failure. That's part of the fun. It's like, hey,
I would disagree. I don't think it's being set up for failure. Saying that you didn't like something isn't failure. No, not at all.
Yeah. It's just like, I bet you really enjoyed it. No, I did not, sir.
Well, let me ask you this. Like in general, I actually kind of dig this musical style as a relaxation piece. Like, does anybody else follow me on this? Like the segue pieces that go between where they have these very specific instruments playing these slower tunes are almost as liquid as the martial arts.
Oh, see, I'm going to attack another movie that you love, Brian, and now you can really just come down on me. This is Kingdom of Heaven territory, where another movie completely ruined by the soundtrack because it's just slow plotting. It's like, this movie is long enough. I don't need long, drawn out violin. Stop.
I'm happy you brought this up because I tried to have my mom watch this movie, not Hero, Kingdom of Heaven, and she's like, "What exactly is going on?" And I'm like, "You know what? Everyone says this. I'm just gonna walk away now."
Well, Chad, you mentioned the unique instruments. The only other thing really I wanted to make sure we brought up at least a little bit was, we talked about the way the movie was created and the political background here, and we did talk about like the beauty of the movie. But this is a martial arts movie, so there were some fight scenes. Mm-hmm. With the music, the first two fight scenes in the movie are accompanied with like a music player, and it's on the guqin in the chess bar or the chess lounge, where the old blind man is playing. I thought it was a dulcimer or something, but it's called like a guqin. And that scene with him like stringing along those things during the fight in the rain with Sky, I think it's the scene I've watched the most. I would say it is my favorite fight scene in this movie. And I wanted to gauge you two on if there was one that stood out like, oh, this is the one I really liked. I will say the spear that Donnie Yen is using, you see that spear in a lot of different movies and in a lot of different time periods. The way that it moves it is I think a bamboo spear. They have it looking like it's made of metal or like it's a silver spear, but that exact same shape and the way that it moves is exactly similar to a very classic like bamboo spear with that same tuft that's used in the fighting, like as part of like a distraction. A lot of very quick movements, and that one I think I've rewatched more than any other scene. Do you guys have a favorite?
In the movie or period?
In this movie, I think if we want to do a whole separate podcast, a separate retro movie fight table where we talk about our favorite fight scenes, I'm down. But I'm just talking about Hero.
No, I guess the reason I ask is in terms of weapons you see reused quite frequently off of pop culture. I was thinking more of the Highlander sword. Like that samurai sword is like really copied and pasted heavily throughout pop culture as like the samurai, like the specific, like the ivory color handle, like dragon end sword that Duncan MacLeod uses.
Donnie Yen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a heavily used.
Donnie Yen was in Highlander though. He was in Endgame.
Yeah, and it's even used in Altered Carbon. But anyway, to your point, like yes, I hear you that it's a commonly used set point.
Do you have a favorite scene? Is it between Broken Sword and Nameless? Is it between Broken Sword and the Emperor? Is it between Moon and Snow? Like I think the colors of Moon and Snow, the bright orange that fades to red, is really visually striking. But yeah, if you don't have one, that's fine. Maybe they're all good to me.
No, if I'm going to go with a cinematography piece, my favorite fight scene is Sky and Nameless. If we're going to go with my favorite actual scene, period, and this is not toward our superlatives, just in terms of what I was just into at the time, it's between Snow and Broken Sword before Nameless steps in.
Oh yeah.
Their dichotomy is the pull of this movie. For me, it's the disagreement, the understanding of each other's talents. It is the hatred that isn't hatred. Like they load so much into their relationship with no emphasis whatsoever on their relationship.
Yeah.
It's palpable.
That it is amazing. Like that's the heavy in this movie for me.
It's great.
You can say, as far as the political piece on this, like the Broken Sword was wrong. But Broken Sword didn't see 2,000 years into the future. He liked the unity aspect to the point where he would die for it. He had no idea how that would be executed.
Poor choice of words.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And although his counterpart, his 1B, the love of his life, like he'd rather die and be wrong and fine with that than go against what he thought was in the best interest. And I respect that. I also respect the fire that Snow has against it. So the contrasting elements of their relationship are really the crux and what I love the most about this movie.
I think for me, Sword and Snow's fight scene at the very end, when they're in your muddy desert, it's brown.
Mm-hmm.
We know, we're pretty sure at this point, it's real. We're not getting all these pops of color and everything else. Everything Bryan just touched on, the eye acting, the chemistry, the passion, they really go at each other for a while until Broken Sword just decides I'm gonna drop my sword in the middle of the one fantastical moment where they're flying at each other. But otherwise, it was a very down to earth fight, and I think that's why it's my favorite fight scene.
Yeah, I like that that Frye said like it's heavy. Their connection's really palpable. I really like that fight scene too, and it ends with him in her arms, and she repeats it 3 times different ways. Why didn't you block my strike?
Yeah,
that's not how this was supposed to end to any of them, but it does, and it feels weighty. I'm glad I got your answers on that. I was brought in. If you guys remember, I was brought in as the romance guy to the Retro Movie Roundtable, and now we're pivoting to have me being in the martial arts ones. Maybe we start doing more of these.
Yeah, you've stolen my thunder.
All right, guys, I think it's about time to do some superlatives. Are you guys good?
Woohoo!
Ready.
Favorite part? All right, so MVP, so most valuable actor. Maybe it should be an MVA. Let's go, Chad.
I am not choosing an actor. We haven't dropped his name, but we've talked about his work. Christopher Doyle. He's the cinematographer, and he, in my mind, is what makes this movie so memorable. And man, he just did a fantastic job.
Okay, well, he just brought P back into the value system.
Phrasing.
And this is Dustin Mallard's bringing some more P back into the system. And
let's not make this a thing.
Malachi? Dustin Malachi?
This is Dustin Malachi Mallards, and I'm here to tell you it's Zhang Yimou. Zhang Yimou is my that's the director. The storytelling aspect of this, I think the closest thing when I was young and learning that things don't have to be linear was nuts to me. I think the first one that I saw was like Pulp Fiction in that way, and then I still don't understand Memento. But this movie,
nobody does.
Yeah, I don't get it, but this movie I do get, and combined with Doyle's work, the cinematography, I do like the music. And in total, this is what I want out of a movie. This is more than just a martial arts movie to me. It's more complete, and so hats off to Zhang.
Excellent. I went with Maggie Chung for mine. Flying Snow was my absolute favorite character in this. I felt like she showed the deepest range from across. I mean, you can have Nameless, who really just kind of keeps the status quo through the whole film. Sky, same kind of deal. He's limited in terms of his screen time. And then Broken Sword, obviously he's got a bunch of stuff going on with him and Snow, but I felt like in terms of character development and how they end the story, Flying Snow was my favorite.
Very nice.
I think you're spot on. I agree with you.
So supporting actor, Chad.
Yeah, this is my first actor. You hit it with your MVP, but it's Maggie Chung. I think she does a great job conveying the conflict in her, the frustration with Broken Sword, and just ultimately the regret that drives her to suicide. It's all believable with very little dialogue.
That's 3 for 3, boys, because that's my best supporting actor, because I did not go actor with MVP. Maggie Chung for me as well. She gets to do a lot of acting, not a lot of dialogue needed even. But I think the first glimpse you get of her is sipping tea and splashing it over her shoulder into Zhang Ziyi's face. She's great. I'm actually kind of amending it. It's not best supporting actor. Of the 6 people to pick from, she's the best.
Right.
I've really kind of hammered this already, but my supporting is Tony Xiao-Wei Leung. It's Broken Sword because it's the two of them that make this movie compelling for me. It's the difference, but yet their polarizing aspects really make this film for me. And yeah, I couldn't think of anybody else but to put. I think she was number 1, he was number 2.
You are feeling the love tonight.
I did. I really like. The more I watched this movie, the first time I saw it, I had none of these takes. This was just an interesting movie to watch, beautiful movie to watch. And the more I watched it for the podcast, specifically eye to detail, I was like, man, this is not at all what they're going for, but this is what it should have been.
Yeah.
And that intricate piece of them in this was striking to me. It's not the point, but it's the striking piece for me.
Yeah, it'll be more memorable about this movie than why I picked it. That wasn't why I picked it, but it will be more of that percentage now. Totally.
Hidden gem for you, Chad?
I went with Donnie Yen. He's been around for me for a long time. I mentioned Highlander, Endgame. He keeps popping up in great stuff that I enjoy. Most notably, from recent memory is Chirrut Imwe from Rogue One. Put Donnie Yen in more movies, please.
What's the line there? I'm one with the Force is with me, something like that. Being a big Donnie Yen fan helped me love that movie even more. My hidden gem is I think Zhang Ziyi is going to be remembered most in history for Memoirs of a Geisha from 2005. But in the martial arts movies she's in, she is often playing a younger woman who gets emotional. And I think it's really well done when she does it. She's an actor / model. And so it's not often that we get the model style actresses that have range. And her range of when she is upset, crying, screaming, bloodlust, twin swords coming, it's really well done for her. So it's just that aspect of her acting is something that I hadn't really put much thought into before, but that's my hidden gem. Is her range.
That's awesome. I actually agree with Chad. It was one of those like, haha, I love you. Like you see him, you're like, oh, I love this guy. So definitely back that up. It's just so much fun when I see him in movies, and I'm always behind it. Do you have a recast, Dustin?
Yeah, I do actually. And though I love Donnie Yen, I'm actually recasting him because he plays only one emotion the whole time. And in recounting the story, they don't. I mean, I guess it's potentially up for debate. They don't actually fight. This is all done in their mind before he uses the move, or like they just agree to do this fake fight, whatever. But I was gonna put in Wu Jing, and I don't know if he's that popular here in the States, but he was in a Donnie Yen movie called Kill Zone, and he plays kind of a high-strung, very fast twitch martial artist that I think. And I'll save this little detail for just a little bit later, but I think if you were to potentially retell Sky's story, having somebody we've got enough stoic people in this movie, if we're being fair. So to replace one of them with someone a little more high strung, that's my recast.
Okay.
Gotcha. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I'm going with Zhang Ziyi. She did do a great job. She played Moon, but I'm going with Fan Bingbing. She was most recently in X-Men Days of Future Past. She was Blink.
Yeah.
And,
dude. One of my favorite X-Men characters, too.
Yeah. Fan is just a little younger looking. I think that was what struck me is Zhang, she looks a little too old to be as impulsive and reactionary as she is. I wanted someone slightly younger in the role. Someone else I thought of was Liu Yifei, who played Mulan in the most recent live action, but just a tiny bit younger.
Makes sense.
I've had a couple instances where I felt this way, but I'm a huge Chow Yun Fat fan.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted him to be the Emperor.
Oh, I like that.
That's a good one.
Like, I think he would have been a really, like, compelling Emperor piece, like, especially, like, picturing him from things like Batman Begins. I feel like there could have been, like, a cool, like, Zen piece of him being Emperor.
He's always going to be Yimou Bai to me. I can't even. What else has he been in? I don't know. But
I mean, all kinds of stuff.
But yeah, he'll always be Yimou Bai. But yeah, that's a good recast too.
Best shot, Chad.
I think the forest scene with Snow standing under the tree and it's pouring leaves is just probably the most gorgeous shot I've seen in all of cinema.
Wow. I mean, and you're not wrong. It's incredible.
Are you doubling down or?
Oh no, I'm not doubling down. I think that's a great scene in terms of beauty. Mine is in the desert when Broken Sword and Snow are awaiting a flag from an old man on a horse, and they're standing on two different stone pillars. Which I think that desert locale is actually really pretty as well. But I think what's important about that is we know that they have two different beliefs. And I think at the moment she's still going to be surprised that it's yellow. She's expecting red, because she doesn't know about Broken Sword's ideals seeping into Nameless yet. So seeing them standing on like two different pillars of ideals in a way, I thought was really well done.
I hate you so much right now.
Is that yours?
I literally have in my notes two standing on desolate hilltops waiting for flag.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you. Like that was literally. I mean, it brings back my point of why these two are so important to this plot. Like it's yes, they feel this way for each other, but they also have this difference in nationalistic values, for lack of a better term, because it's what the movie ends up being. But that really was the most striking cinematographic aspect of this, was the two of them waiting for the word. And wow, I mean, that was a very heavy point, because it didn't just have wait for what happens to the country, it has wait for what happens to them.
Yeah.
All right, so best scene, Dustin.
Mine is involving these two characters again. It is in the calligraphy school. Broken Sword says, all right, for an 8-foot piece, I'm going to need red ink. And it starts the back and forth between, well, you'll need to request red ink from the mistress. And so it starts that back and forth between them that culminates with Broken Sword taking Moon, having sex with his assistant. I wanted you to see their back and forth that ends up with the sword through the wall through Broken Sword. That's my favorite. I think there's some awesome camera work when they go down the hallways to show how tumultuous the relationship is. That's the best scene for me.
Chad?
I went with the lake scene. It's up there. It's probably my favorite fight that didn't happen, I guess. It took almost 3 weeks to film. It shows in the beauty of that scene. The director was insisting the water be perfectly still, so they were only filming for like 2 hours a day every single day. It's just a labor of love, and I loved it.
For me, the best scene was the fight between Nameless and Sky. I really thought that this was lost. Toward the end of the movie, Sky's piece in this was relegated very low. His whole piece, where he pays the guy to play music while they fought in their minds, like that's such a cool thing.
It's
like
cool.
I was really like that. That's what got me into the movie in the first place. Like I'm not sure like what my feelings would be later on if it weren't for that initial piece. So although it ends up being not as important in the greater scheme in terms of, all of the gravity that happens in the hour and a half after that, that part really sets you up for it, because you're just like, oh man, this is crazy. This is awesome.
It's a great one. Yeah, and he fights those 7 dudes without even unsheathing his spear.
Right.
He's got the leather holster on, I guess we'll say.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have anything to say about best wardrobe, makeup, Dustin?
So Snow, I wouldn't say she's particularly pale. I also don't tend to notice white people faces being pale, nor do I even like using the word. So I don't like thinking about Asian actresses or Asian people like having fair complexions. But that all being said, there's just the beautiful scene that Chad had mentioned with the leaves falling, and it's orange and then it turns to red. Her decision to keep her face devoid of rouge or lipstick. It's very, like I said, pale. I don't like to use the word, but that is just so visually striking and beautiful. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Chad?
Going back to the red sequences, there's a special shade of red dye that had to be imported from England to dye the clothing and make the costumes look just right on camera. So, that's a little bit of wardrobe attention to detail of, okay, we can't just get Sherman-Williams red or whatever. We've got to go import English red.
I spent 2 wonderful years doing classes in college that were absolutely no benefit to me later on in life, except the fact that I enjoy them.
You mean the Frisbee course we took together?
No, that was that. Look, that's awesome forever. That's just necessary. No, I'm talking about my humanities classes.
Yes.
They were easily my favorite non-essential courses that I ever took, and one of them went into dyes. Like they literally talked about various countries, the beetles, bugs, and other things that they use to create the colors that are synonymous with their countries and with their clothing. And it blew my mind the various things that you could crush and destroy to create a color. But it was super interesting. And this wasn't like a huge piece. We're talking about like a day or two of talk on it. But it was something that really like hit with me because they go through so many different cultures and how various colors were generated by the insects and whatever else they had handy to create them and why. And that was just a mind-blowing piece for me.
Yeah, Phoenician purple.
Yeah. So
what's Americans' color? Like red dye 23, the stuff we put in our food?
Ketchup. It's ketchup red.
Ketchup
Just
red.
Ketchup red. Change one thing, Chad.
So did I mention I hated the soundtrack?
I believe once or twice.
I really hate the soundtrack. Please rescore this entire movie to make it less plotting and make it feel more legendary.
I mean, I'm never going to argue against making music better.
That's a nice way of saying I disagree with everything you said.
My change one thing is I think it could be cool if the stories are being told from a different perspective. If like the fighting style or the tone / speed of like how quick the movements are. I was thinking of this idea, and I mentioned it a little earlier. The sky spear fight. It could go one way when Nameless is telling the story, but maybe he fights differently. There's only so many words I can use to describe that, but if he were recast, maybe he fights extremely viciously in one retelling and extremely stoically in another. I thought that would be a cool way to implement that storytelling aspect a second way or an additional way.
I like it.
I had a really hard time with Change One Thing because I didn't feel qualified to augment a movie like this. But I will say that if I had to change one thing, at least make it more understandable about scene changes. Like, you give me a map.
Get left behind a little bit.
Well, like you give me a map initially. Maybe have segue pieces like zero in, like back out and zero in on where the next part is happening, so I can at least follow geographically, so I can at least follow along how this is happening. Because I just felt like they cherry picked the best, most beautiful locations in China and said, yeah, they're happening everywhere.
So you've got the Game of Thrones map going up and popping up and saying this region.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I could go for that. That's fine.
I could too. Yeah, that's cool.
All right. So, best quote, Chad.
Since you wish to die, I will assist you.
That's good.
That's
Dustin.
a good one. To think that one character could be written 19 different ways. How can people communicate when they do not understand each other?
You know, that is the one benefit of a dictatorship, is you can condense all the characters into one.
That's what he says he's going to do, too. Everyone's going to speak the same language. It's going to be great.
Fear will keep them in line. Oh, wait.
I had a hard time at times not taking this dirty, but I feel like the cycle down piece of this movie, how swift your sword is.
Awesome. Let's leave it there.
Movie quotes every man wishes to hear from his wife. Wait a minute. No, you probably don't want to hear that.
Take it back. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, let's do some ratings and recommendations now. So, Dustin, on a scale of 1 to 5.
Okay, this has happened before, and it's happening today. I went into this podcast with a 4.5 stars. I would have said the only thing that like really stood out to me that didn't, because it is a favorite of mine, but I do think they overuse slow motion. I think that the martial arts scene, if they're leaning one direction or the other, they're leaning maybe too much towards beauty and dancing as opposed to hard hitting steel. And so like if that had to swing back in the direction, it would be towards the things that are not done on wires. Although I love the wire stuff, I'm just saying if it had to swing a direction, that would be it. But I'm actually, this is now a 4-star movie for me because I really had to take what Chad had to say about the outside real world aspects of how this movie's made and what it's meant to do. So while it is still always going to remain a favorite movie of mine, this is a 4-star movie for me.
It's easy to blame Quentin Tarantino. He presented this movie. He brought it to America.
I saw that. It's like the first paragraph on Wiki. Yep.
We keep doing his movies even when they're from China.
Yep.
You're sneaking them in. It's like Jet Li, Chinese movie, great. This won't have Quentin Tarantino at all. Son of a...
There it is.
Got me again.
Sneaky. All right, Chad.
I've been trying not to beat this dead horse, but I have trouble giving this more than 3 stars. It's gorgeous, but the historical message is extremely problematic when you consider what follows. To me, it's glorifying the world's first police state, and I know I've now gotten our podcast banned in China. So I apologize to all of our Chinese listeners. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. We'll miss you.
Until now, I can't really speak to that. But I no. The thing is, I agree. The bottom line is, I agree. For me, this movie's always been a visually striking piece. It's been more about the feeling than the plot, and I think it's important in a way to give that sort of credence to an area that is basically rife with strife right now. I mean, we have issues with China, and there are obviously gorgeous parts to what their culture could provide. I guess I'm trying to olive branch the fact that I recognize this is a beautiful place. And although we don't necessarily agree all on political aspects, a nod to that.
Very good.
All right. We got to pick a movie for next time that will be less politically charged. Or will it?
We've done Born on the 4th of July. I think that's as political as it gets.
Oh,
hey, you didn't give a number of stars.
Oh, 4 stars. I said 4.
So, well, okay, yeah. I don't know how you want to put it in, but yeah, 4 stars.
I thought I said 4. Oh, sorry. 4 stars for me. So for next time, option 1, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. When Robin and his Moorish companion come to England and the tyranny of the Sheriff of Nottingham, he decides to fight back as an outlaw. Option 2, Robin Hood, 2010. In 12th century England, Robin Longstride and his band of marauders confront corruption in a local village and lead an uprising against the crown that will forever alter the balance of power for England. Option 3, Disney's Robin Hood, 1973. The story of a legendary British outlaw is portrayed with the characters as humanoid animals.
So yeah, we're picking Robin Hood, right?
I think we are, in fact, picking Robin Hood.
Let's go with the Kevin Costner one. Let's go with 1991's Prince of Thieves. Let's rein this in. We've got to establish our Robin Hoods.
All right. We're going with 2001's. No, I'm sorry, 1991's Robin Hood. We're gonna go with that one. So, thank you all for joining us today, and thank all of you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a like on Facebook, and more importantly, comments. We love your comments. We will reply to you. Follow us on Twitter at movie_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. Producing and providing this podcast is fun but not free. We invite you to support the show at Patreon page, www.patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. Any contribution is appreciated and will go toward making the show better for you, the listener. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Chad?
I know Kung Fu.